Have you ever stopped to question if the life you are living is the life your soul chose? We are masters at collecting titles, diplomas, and expectations. But sometimes, everything we learn becomes a burden, a concrete shell that suffocates your original light. This video is the map for the journey of unlearning, an act of spiritual rebellion against conditioning. You don't need to seek something new. You only need to remove what is covering up your innate self. Imagine your essence as a marble statue. You don't need to add clay. You need to remove the excess stone that is imprisoning it. Humanity, in its frantic search for personal development, has reversed this process. We spend our lives adding layers, limiting beliefs, inherited fears, social expectations. This path of accumulation invariably leads to profound misalignment. Unlearning is our rescue tool. It is the courage to look at what you've been taught and ask, is this mine, or is it just a loan? Throughout this script, we will uncover what the philosopher Carl Jung called the persona, to access the true self. Follow me on this summons to the deepest act of spirituality, the return to the inner home. But what prevents this return? It is the first great illusion the world imposed on us, the myth of becoming. Modern society sells us the illusion of incompleteness. The dominant narrative is that you are a draft in constant refinement, forcing you to become the next big success, the next beauty ideal, or the next level of wealth. This is the subtle trap of the myth of becoming. It ensures you are never satisfied with the being you already are. This frenzy for external acquisition is what generates the feeling of misalignment that many experience when pursuing external ideals. Jung defined this with precision. We live imprisoned by the persona, the mask we wear to meet social demands. When we achieve the success defined by the world, the emptiness is deafening, because the persona has prospered, but the self, your true essence, has been neglected and suffocated. The problem is not the desire to evolve, but the belief that your insufficiency will only be remedied by something outside of you. Awakening begins when you realize that the search for being better is, in fact, an escape from the responsibility of being authentic. Your destiny is not in a future to be conquered, but in a present to be revealed. The key to revealing this authentic present, therefore, is not to add, but to subtract. If the myth of becoming is our biggest mistake, the inverse path is our greatest liberation. And this inverse path has a name: unlearning. If mental conditioning is the problem, then unlearning is the alchemical solution. It is not about amnesia, but rather an active and intentional process of deconstructing the mental architecture you inherited. It is the surgery of the soul where we separate what is fact from what is filter. The core concept here, a legacy from Jiddu Krishnamurti, is deconditioning. Freedom only flourishes when we free ourselves from the tyranny of accumulated thought, fear, belief, prejudice. But here is the powerful realization that your authentic self is not lost, just buried. Think of your essence as an indestructible gem. It cannot be lost. It has only been covered by the debris of time. The act of unlearning is not a creation, but a subtraction. You are not building a new identity. You are chiseling the statue that has always existed. This is the paradox of deep spirituality. The greatest act of growth is, in fact, an act of removal. You become free not by what you acquire, but by what you have the courage to let go of. The authentic self does not need to be sought. It only needs silence to emerge. But how do you become silent enough for this buried essence to emerge? Silence requires discernment. Therefore, the next stage of the journey is practical action, identifying your conditioned layers. Unlearning demands the courage of the archaeologist, digging into the depths and distinguishing the genuine artifact from the rubble. The first practical step toward the awakening of consciousness is learning to identify the conditioned layers that dictate your choices. And in this digital age, this challenge has become exponential. It is crucial to address the impact of social media and the culture of comparison on the formation of our perception of the ideal self. Media acts as a distorted mirror, where the persona of others is constantly displayed. Comparison becomes an open wound, forcing us to shape our lives not by our truth, but by what is worthy of a like. The fear of others' judgment is the cement that solidifies your conditioned layers. To unmask these external influences, I recommend 2 self-reflection practices. Number 1. The Journal of Gentle Disobedience. Daily, ask yourself the question, what are 3 things I did today to please others instead of honoring myself? Number 2. The Witnessing Exercise. Sit in silence and observe your thoughts. When a thought like, I should be, or I am a failure because, arises, write it down, and then write next to it, where does this voice come from? This simple act of witnessing separates the conditioned voice from your observing consciousness. By undertaking these personal development exercises, you begin to disinvest your emotional energy in these beliefs. You don't fight them. You merely recognize them as foreign, allowing them to lose their power over your life. This individual deconstruction, this act of detachment from what is not yours, is neither a solitary nor a new path. Quite the opposite. It is a method tested and proven over the centuries. We find validation and profound encouragement in the historical and philosophical references for unlearning. The path of unlearning is not a modern concept. It is a universal legacy of wisdom. Philosophers and mystics from all traditions recognized that truth is only achieved by the dissolution of what is false. The skeptic Michel de Montaigne, in his essays, made doubt his philosophy. He celebrated uncertainty as the only authentic state for the human being, challenging the arrogance of certainties and dogmas. Unlearning, for him, was living life without the burden of having to prove something or conform to any system. Similarly, the Sufi path, called tariqa, is essentially the purification of the nafs, the ego. The poet Rumi reminds us that the destruction of the ego is the only way to union with the truth. This vast legacy proves that the courage to question is the engine of spiritual awakening, and the prize of this journey is tangible and immediate. Once you detach from the false, the positive effects of authenticity propagate through actions such as better relationships, genuine joy, and greater courage. You stop attracting roles and start attracting connections that honor who you truly are. Your energy, once spent on sustaining the persona, is now channeled into intrinsic joy and courageous actions. However, it is crucial to emphasize that this is not an isolated event, but a continuous and empowering process. Unlearning is a daily practice, a discipline of self-honor that strengthens you with every layer removed, leading you to a deeper and more sustainable realization. When we embrace this discipline of continuous removal, a question arises: what is the final destination? The answer is the purpose of the entire journey. It is the convergence point of all this inner work, the rediscovery of the authentic self. We have arrived at the new beginning. The goal of the journey of unlearning is not nihilistic emptiness, but radiant fullness. When you remove the layers of fear, expectation, and conditioning, what remains is your original essence, the wisdom, peace, and joy that do not depend on external validation. The rediscovery of the authentic self is the apex of personal development and lived spirituality. It is in this space of authenticity that intuition becomes your master compass and your innate strength is revealed. You don't need to acquire love. You just unlearn the fear that was blocking the love that you already are. You don't need to find your purpose. You unlearn the distractions that kept you from living the purpose that is in your spiritual DNA. This is the only path to freedom, that of freeing yourself from your own self-imposed prisons. The journey of unlearning is the most radical form of personal development. It demands the courage to be ignorant of what the world has taught you and the humility to surrender to your inner wisdom. Remember, Your authentic self emerges naturally when you unlearn to be who you are not. If the profound message of this video resonated with your soul and ignited the flame of your spiritual awakening, I invite you to be part of this community of seekers. What is one thing you are ready to unlearn today to reclaim your true essence? Share your experience in the comments. Your sharing is also a seed of healing for other hearts. And if you are looking for a safe harbor to nurture this newly lit flame and find those who walk on the same frequency, our community is the sanctuary where fertile silence is shared and deepened. And to continue expanding your sanctuary of clarity, we suggest the video in the card. May it be a breath of fresh air, peace and light.